Okay, this is a game on Redshire and the WZ-111, the Tier 9 Chinese heavy tank. I realize I haven't really done highlight with a heavy tank on Redshire, so I want to show what I would do here. So really, I've talked about this in Redshire before. The 1-line, 3-line has some synergy. The WZ-111 is actually a really good tank to play on the 1-line, but if you don't have people playing the 3-line properly, the 1-line kind of gets boned, so you don't generally want to go there solo unless you have some indication that your team is going to play this 3-line properly. So I'll play the 3-line, and what we'll end up finding out is that they do end up having a lot of guys on the 1-line, and it'll take a little bit while to crush them, and it's something where if we had appropriate 3-line play and I was over on the 1-line, this side would be won much faster, but we'll talk about that when we get to that bridge. And so you see we have both of our light tanks going over here, but what you'll see is that they don't actually do any spotting, they don't go forward, they don't find out, they don't get enough intel. And that's sort of the problem with light tanks on this map, is that they don't really understand. It's like they see this guy, but they're not, you know, when you go in, you're not worried about this guy, you're thinking about what does this guy have behind him, but our team is not doing that. And see how they've pushed up here. This is something that I always say, particularly when you're in a light tank on these maps, you need to be careful not to ISO yourself, because if somebody who's good thinks you're ISO, then they're just going to push over on you, which is what I'm going to do against this WZ-132. He lit me, right, but I didn't see anybody on that back line over there, so I know that he's basically by himself. And then as long as I'm in these ditches, I'm slightly safe from artillery. I can be spotted from that 1-line, so I'm going to be going on this little slope right here where I'll be able to get shots on them. And then you'll notice that all of our guys behind me are still sitting a little bit too far back. And so they've got two tier 8 mediums up on that side. We have a high concentration of our tanks over on this 0 line, which, as I've said before, is I think is really an inconsequential part of this map. And so I have an E75 next to me as well, but so when the WZ-111 does not really have that good depression, but if you angle the front of your tank up like this, I can shoot down at those guys relatively easily, whereas the E75 is on basically flat ground, so he's not really in a good position to shoot down on those guys. And I do want to eventually make sure that I keep these guys honest over here, right? I know that they have a few guys over here. I don't know if there's anybody else further back on this spine, so that's something that we want to see, right? And so if you creep up on this side, you can't be fired on from the 1-line, and I can still see this side. Unfortunately, did not pin that JT-88, but he is there, right? And so our team can damage him, and he'll move back a little bit because of it. Our E75 is YOLOing in there a little bit. And so I'm going to go back one ditch, because they've started to move up on this 1-line, and I don't want them to be able to get easy shots through the inside of here, so I need to come out here and make sure that these guys can't just sit here and snipe at our guys. Basically what we have here is two light tanks that are sniping at a distance against medium tanks, which is not really the role that you want to play in a light tank. They have their other medium tank on this ridge on the left. Their T-44 is down to 1 shot, so he's going to head out, but we have a Centurion 1 over there, so I'm less concerned about that guy right now. And so our T-54 now has YOLO'd over in this direction. The E-75 is now dead. It took him a little while to kill him, but he is. And this STA is going to die because I'll be able to get a shot on him there, which he's basically in a commit position. And it's the same thing. I know the T-49 is low is over here, WZ-132 is over here, but he's getting pushed by this T-44. Right, T-44 is basically full health. That guy's 1 shot for him, so that should not be a problem. The question is that I don't want these guys that are over here to get easy shots on this 1-line. So that JT-88 is down, but the low is down there. The low probably did not spot me. It was probably the T-49 a little bit higher on the ridge, and I just never detected him. The low was actually below the ridge. It's taking a little bit for this guy to kill this WZ-132. I know the T-49 is around here someplace, but I can't chase down a T-49, so the T-49 gets to decide when to engage, and he pops over right here to try to shoot me, but he misses his little snapshot, and I bounce him. And then so I just get behind this rock, and again this guy finally goes down. But that's certainly a concern when you see a tier 8 take that long to kill a scout, a one-shot scout. And so I know the T-49 is going to come back around here someplace. It's just been his MO so far. And he's over here on the left.
It's a trap!
And that's what we call a bad trade. And I'm relatively safe from artillery in my position, so I can just sit here until I draw spot, right? And then so you can watch him, watch what he's doing. See how he's going out this way? That suggests that he's going to try to get around to that side to kill artillery. So if you're these guys, you know, you want to be able to shift back. If you're artillery and you see that, you want to be able to pay attention to that. Our guys are slowly dying over here, which is kind of expected. But again, that's not a problem, because whoever wins over here, if they try to push across here, it'll be really easy for me to get them. I sort of miscalculated where the T-49 was going to cross there, which I think is going to cost us some lives. So I figured this guy is dead. I need to get into a position to protect these two guys if I can, so I'm going to try to take a cutoff route. The T-49 presumably did not pen through the Su-14-2, so he needs to wait for a full reload. Our S-51 is charging over there, which is probably not what you want to do, but it works. So he's lucky that he doesn't get hit by artillery. And then now I just need to see if these guys push through this field here. As I said before, it's really easy to pick them off. And if they're not on that side, then that means that they're going back towards our dude on cap. And there's a bunch of bushes both up at the top of this hill and even at the bottom of this hill where it meets the road, where there's some trees down there that you can use for camo cover to spot. You can also use them to shoot through, which is what makes this a really easy place to defend. Their T-34 is in the middle, headed southwest. T-54 is headed presumably towards cap. So I need to get my draw box within range of this Centurion. I don't know where the AT-15 is. Presumably he's still in the same general area, but we don't know. And I missed that shot. And I need to try to take advantage of the fact that our Centurion is out there and actually hit a shot. And so I know that the T-54 is one shot, the T-34 is one shot, and I don't know what the AT-15 is at quite yet. So because I know the T-54 was headed west on this K line, this guy was headed southwest through here. He's a relatively slow tank. Both of them were spotted relatively recently. I'm going to go up here and I'll just look at where the AT-15 is. If the AT-15 is still up here, he'll be ISO'd. This T-54 can't help him. This T-34 won't be able to get over to there to help him. And it's worthwhile intel to have in terms of knowing where enemy tanks were and or might possibly be. And at this point I have 1200 health, so I'm not really worried about 1v1ing any of these tanks. I just don't want to get myself into a 1v3 situation or put myself in a situation where artillery gets an extended look at me. This T-54 might be headed up here, we don't know, but at this point we need to have a little bit of intel into their base before we can make any other decisions. He is one shot, so theoretically that makes things easier if he does decide to push that one line for our artillery. So their M12 is out here, the AT-15 appears to have moved. The T-34 was out in this field to my southwest, but presumably he moved out because we didn't see him and he didn't shoot us. So presumably he either continued moving southwest to hook up with the T-54 or something. And then, so what I want to be able to do is come back and cut through this middle here, because basically I know that I have just under 5 minutes left, and so I'm basically in time management mode. I know I have 3 tanks, all, you know, at least 2 of those tanks are one shot for me, and I'm fairly certain that I can outduel an AT-15 as long as I don't have to fight them all at once. So what I want to be able to do is come and surf this middle ridge through here, and then come around over here and see where I get lit, and see if I light anything. And so we light the T-34 here, who's just below that little ridge line, and he gets a shot that sets us on fire, but that's fine, still have 800 health. Don't know exactly where the T-54 is. He could have come over onto the center ridge line. Don't exactly know. The AT-15 presumably moved back towards their cap, so he's probably not going to be in a forward position. So again, I know I have 4 minutes left, so I'm just going to surf these ridges and see where I get lit. And this is a situation where if I get lit and I don't light the guy who's lighting me, I can always just drive down on one side of the ridge or the other, if need be. And so we light each other pretty much at the same time, and he should have dropped back there, but he decided to try to aim and shoot at me, which is not the right trade, because he could have done one shot of damage, but I would have killed him. He needs to find an opportunity where he can get me coming across an open plane and use his clip to his advantage. So now I know that there's only an AT-15 left. There's 2 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock. So if he's hiding, the only way I can draw him out is on cap. I have enough time to put on a little bit of cap pressure, so I can drive straight there. But presumably he's going to be somewhere on this K line. Either that or maybe pushing up the 1 line. But again, if he's pushing up the 1 line, we can outcap them.
It's a trap!
And so we get lit approaching the cap, so I'm not exactly sure where he's at. Then he appears over here on the right side, which good for him. Take a little bit of snapshot and just miss entirely, which is not so good. And so he's got me down. I am 2-shot at this point. He is lit for artillery. If I can track him out here, it'll make it easier for our artillery. Artillery has a kind of a thin window to shoot him. They've probably got another 20 meters or so until he moves close enough to this house, but they are able to pick him off. Otherwise, I still think we would have been able to get him down. I don't think it would have been a huge issue, but that's just something to think about when you have a building like this where you can basically do peek out from behind relative safety. So when we look at the map, I actually probably would have been better off going on the 1 line as long as these guys played this 3 line appropriately. I don't know that they would have played the 3 line appropriately if I was not there, though, so it's difficult to say. I was still able to get great shots on the 1 line basically by elevating the front of my tank, so even in a tank that doesn't have good gun depression, I can still shoot down at these guys. And as long as you stay mobile and you move around in these pockets, you're reasonably artillery safe. There's only tier 7 7 artillery in this game, so it wasn't a huge threat, but it is something, you know, there is 3 of them, and so it's something that you need to know. And then you also need to know, kind of like that WZ-132 that went into this first pocket, you need to know when you're in danger of getting pushed, when you need to go back to the back line. This line obviously is going to be much safer for you. It's got much safer firing lanes and things like that, particularly if you do control this one line here. And so basically a lot of this game was just mopping up these guys that were on the 1 line. Their 3 line did not really help their 1 line guys out too much. They didn't keep us honest for when we were shooting at the guys on the 1 line. So these guys played a little bit too passively, and that allowed us from the 3 line to basically wreck their guys on the 1 line. And then once those guys were clear, we could then just focus on pressing the 3 line. We sent a lot of tanks over to this 0 line, which happens a lot in Redshire, but again, it's kind of inconsequential to who wins the game a lot of times, unless you trade really poorly over there. We didn't trade fantastically over there, but we traded bad enough. And that's sort of always the problem. And like I said, if those guys had decided to continue pushing forward from their cap side, it would have been really easy for me to pick them off anywhere in the cap area or on the way to the cap area from my position of relative safety. So that's always something to think about. And then after that, it was just sort of probing to figure out where they were. You know, we didn't have the numbers tank wise. We still had 2 artillery up, but you know, they had 3 tanks up, and so it was just a situation where we wanted to probe cautiously and not put ourselves into a situation where we had to do a 1v3. And as it turns out, we were able to get them into little discrete pockets. They were 2 separated, and that allowed us to pick them off sort of 1 by 1, which is not what you want to do in that particular case. If you're in that particular case where you're on their team, ideally what you want to do, especially once you know that I kill your artillery over here, you want to make a concerted push where you take all 3 of your tanks and maybe play this ridge line over here and perhaps send somebody to try to get artillery. But that's not what they did, and that basically allowed me to pick them off 1 by 1. And by taking this sort of conservative route where I came back through this middle, you know, I'm looking to be lit there or to light something, and as it turns out, we were able to pick up the T-34 at one point, and then we came over here and picked up the T-54, and then we were able to just go down and pick up the AT-15. And so if we look at the stats, it's pretty much what you would expect. So our artillery did a reasonable job. We got 2.6 out of that guy, 1.6 out of the SU-14, and 1.2 out of the M12. We did not get a whole lot out of our guys on the other side, which is unfortunate, but that happens a lot on that 0 line where you don't really trade that well. Our E-75 was essentially in the same position as me early on, but he was not effective in actually getting himself shots, and that's sort of the limitation of playing that era. You have to know where you can go to actually deal damage or to punish your opponent. Otherwise, there's no recourse, you know, and they can just run rampant on that 1 line. So that's certainly something to keep in mind. We didn't have very good shot efficiency. We had to take a couple snapshots that we missed, and we had a bad bounce on the JT-88 that we probably could have aimed better. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. You'll notice that we didn't really bounce any damage there. We basically, on a map with rolling hills like Redshire, the Chinese heavy armor is less effective because it tends to be thinner but more sloped, and changes in elevation negates slope. But we were still able to basically use our health pool as that armor, so that, you know, even when they had 3 tanks left and I only had 1 tank left, you know, I still had the advantage because I had more health than all of them. Okay, so I hope that was helpful for playing heavy on Redshire and different things that you can do. Hopefully we'll get a 1-line play eventually, maybe in a platoon or something, where I can show you guys that as well. But yeah, so thanks for watching.